Now this is hopefully going to be the start of a series where I go back and talk about the games that have been justifiably or not criticized by players and critics alike. These will all be games that I have not played before and my first real impressions after reading countless bad reviews. Today we're starting with the Order 1886, an early PS4 exclusive, and the first exclusive that will be covered on this channel. I not only want to give this game another shot, but I want to figure out for myself, is it really that bad? Before we answer that question, if you'd like to subscribe or just interaction in general, I'd really appreciate it, and it's absolutely free. There are some points of contention I noticed while going through the reviews I mentioned earlier, and one I saw time and time again is the story, so I think that's where we're going to start. We start off by meeting the main protagonist, Grayson Galahad, as he is being tortured by what seems to be the Royal Guard. After killing the two guards trying to force information out of us, we struggle to make it out just before finding an empty gun and using it to scare a guard into letting us continue. Which doesn't go well, because he is able to take over and use our gun against us, but it's empty, so it doesn't work out too well. We kill him and we are shot at by America's favorite fighting Frenchman, Lafayette, and then we are confronted by many others as we run away and get cornered on a breezeway where we decide it's better to take our chances in the cold, more than likely shark-infested water. It all goes black, and we come back to when Galahad was a part of the Order we just watched him try to escape. We meet up with a grain after almost breaking our back, and we make our way to the United India House, where we have to kill the escaped convicts who are killing guards and in general just being complete assholes. After killing them all, we meet Lafayette again as he's trying to get some, if you know what I mean. We head into the London Underground and have to fight our first half-breeds. When one escapes, we have to chase it through the streets of London, trying to kill it with the induction lance, and then Lafayette pokes the thing for some reason. We then learn about Jack the Ripper, who is running rampant in Whitechapel. With going to the council with our concerns, they basically give a big fuck you, but luckily the son has some sense and lets us continue our investigation. We then meet the one and only Nikola Tesla, who is basically the council scientist making weapons and gadgets for the Order. The first of which he shows us can overpower the direct current used in most electronics, causing them to short. He then shows us a sniper rifle, which is a sniper rifle, and the monocular made for Lafayette. With Lafayette and a grain, we go to Whitechapel and battle our way through hordes of rebels until reaching the London hospital to find it being infested by lichens. We move through the hospital and come in contact with an elder who almost kills Izzy, but she is able to make it through, and we learn that the rebels are planning to infiltrate Agamemnon, an Indian company ship set to deliver cargo to the Americas. They want to kill Lord Hastings, the chairman of the India Company, but we are able to foil their plans because they didn't put the correct patches on the uniform. Anyway, a bomb explodes, which leads to everyone being evacuated on lifeboats? Life balloons? Whatever. But we stay behind to continue our search for the leader and end up meeting another rebel on a bridge where there is a second explosion that brings down the ship, crashing it into Hyde Park and destroying the Crystal Palace. We wake up and are able to drink black water and search through the rubble to find Percival, who is also sadly dead. We meet back with the council and watch Lafayette be knighted as Sir Percival, and the Lord Chancellor is just a little upset with the way everything went. But before anything else happens, there is a giant rebel attack on a bridge where even after murdering everybody, Galahad is still on a rampage and decides to chase down the leader, and makes his way down to Whitechapel and meets the person he believed was the leader, but instead he speaks to the actual leader, who somehow convinces him to accompany it to the India Company docks, where we break into a warehouse, we open a box and find hibernating vampires. To stop them from sending these all around the world, we burn the boxes, and somehow with every can there is only enough for a couple of boxes. But we don't have to worry about now, because now we have to worry about Lord Hastings possibly being a vampire himself. To try and further stop the shipments, we team up with Sir Lucan and infiltrate the India Company house to find records of any shipments and to find where the rest are going. But one of the rebels disappeared, and we find him being drained by none other than Hastings himself, who used Lucan to get us and the leader in the same place to capture us both, and he reveals he is Jack the Ripper. But luckily the leader is able to get away, and we have to chase down Lucan after a short battle and killing tons of lichen on the way. After the battle being finished with Lucan showing a small glimpse of what he is, the knights interrupt and arrest Galahad, and Izzy is absolutely pissed. We fast forward to the court where we are sentenced to death, and instead of just accepting, we break out. Well, we did in the intro, but yeah. After jumping into the river/ocean/water, we are rescued by Nikola and a robed figure. When we finally wake up after 2 weeks, because I refuse to say that word, it just doesn't have the same meaning anymore, we meet Ronnie and learn about Sir... How the fuck do you say that name? Sir Bor de Ganis. Butchered it, doesn't matter.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
who had been missing since the Grail, and we fight our way through company men so that we can head back to Whitechapel and finish the fight. But at the same time, the knights are searching for us, and Lafayette is the first we encounter, who actually lets us go. He believes in us, unlike the others who hunt us down. We make our way to the final battle, but not before fighting our way through a shit ton of enemies and into Nicola's lab, where we find him hurt by Lucan, who shows his true form as an Elder Lycan. We get him to the point where he transforms back into his human form. We are talking about the world from his eyes, and his father interrupts, and it turns out that he knew the entire time. And instead of killing Galahad and putting his child out of his misery, he lets us go, but in return he asks us to kill his child, just so we can end it all and leave, and that's what we do. One bullet, and it fades to black. From what I can read between players and critics, some absolutely love the story, like in this Forbes review,
Kinda.
or even a newer review made in April of 2020 by Neverending Realm. But that is all I can find of people saying something positive about the story. At the core, it's a story I felt compelled to keep playing. I did not want to put it down. It wasn't because of the gameplay or the level design. I felt myself pulled into the story of Galahad and his fellow knights like Lafayette and Izzy. From the start, I saw how much they seemed to care about Galahad, and though at the time he was a prisoner, Lafayette could have shot him on sight when he was trying to escape, or when he found him in the brothel near the end of the game, but he didn't. Maybe it was part of his duty as the order not to shoot, but after all Galahad did, the Chancellor would not have even batted an eye, and I think it's pretty obvious that he was trying to hide something from the beginning. And what happens is that he finally tells the truth when his son's life is coming to an end. I think the twist near the end of the game with the vampires was majorly cliche, but that's not to say I didn't enjoy it. It's very Victorian London. There is always going to be vampires and other supernatural creatures. A crashed ship, a lot of the story was actually pretty cliche. We have the twist where we work with the enemy, the crashed ship, and the leader or mentor dying and being replaced by another one of those below him, the walking person on fire, the emotionless yet emotional scream. That doesn't really make sense, but just listen to it and I think you'll understand. There's the person that was once at your side, swearing to take you down, and there was just a ton of cliche, but it all serves a purpose to the wider story. I see everyone talk about how the story was way too short and the anticlimactic ending setting up a sequel, and I understand the frustration. I wish I had got more time or even a solid conclusion to the story that still sets up another, but at the end of the day, these setups are all over any form of media, including video games, movies, books, music, and they don't always come through with that sequel, whether it's poor sales or poor reception, which is what this game fell victim to, and the biggest point I see to its failure, its cinematic nature and its runtime. I want to start with the runtime because it's by far the thing I see most from reading people talk about this game. For a first playthrough, it took me around 7.5 hours, which to me isn't that bad, considering other games at the time that were coming out were considerably longer, such as The Witcher or MGS5 or a multitude of other games that came out. It's a game you can jump into, complete in a weekend, or even platinum in a weekend if you're into trophy hunting. Even looking at more modern games like Spider-Man Miles Morales, which is actually only 7.5 hours according to howlongtobeat.com, which honestly when I played it, I was well versed in the Insomniac Spider games and probably beat it in 6.5 hours and got to platinum not long after. But that's something I didn't let take away from the experience, but it left me wanting more, and if anything, it would make me want to buy a sequel, which is exactly what I'm going to do for Spider-Man 2, and exactly what I would do if a sequel ever came out for the Order. Even looking back at games from previous generations when we were still getting games with hundreds of hours of gameplay, not many people said anything when Mirror's Edge was released with only 6 hours or Uncharted being 8, but it's able to be beaten in 2 and it's actually a trophy for the game. These were also games that came out with a full $60 price tag, which today would be upwards of $80. I know I'm a little defensive over this point, but it frustrates me when something is left behind because of this, when really it's something that wasn't an issue before. The other side of the argument is that there's little to no gameplay, but instead you have long cutscenes, long dialogues, and walks, and what gameplay there is falls flat, which I also don't agree with. The gameplay isn't the main appeal to the Order, and it was never meant to be, but as a gamer it is something that is important. I feel it did well when it came to the gameplay, even though there was not much there. Most sections see you walking or sneaking, fighting someone, then a cutscene, and maybe some traversal, but there isn't much else. There are some QTEs and cutscenes, but we will get to that in a second, because the cover-to-cover shootouts are something we've seen before, and still something we see today. The Order even tries to put a twist on it, bringing in Nikola Tesla to create interesting weapons that use technology instead of regular ammo. I found myself actively trying to find these weapons to use, and whether it's the Falchion and I want to stun my enemies, or the Zappy gun, I really don't remember its name, and actually sending electricity into somebody, I think it wasn't anything new, but it wasn't outdated, and it's still used in modern gaming. It's a system that works, and there's a reason it keeps appearing in games to this day. Now, back to the QTEs, there's another point I saw often, and I don't really agree when people say it's there to keep you awake. Yes, it's probably there to keep you involved, but I don't think they were any more predatory than what I've seen in other shooters, especially when it came to melee battles, specifically the one at the end where you have to fight an Elder Lycan. You hit him, do a QTE, but at the same time, Spider-Man does basically the same thing, with even less feeling behind it, because you hit Doc 3 times than dodge. I hate to keep comparing to Spider-Man, but it's honestly one of the closest things I can compare to in terms of people's issues. I of course see the issues, but don't think they ruin the experience to the point where it would be disappointing or a deal breaker. But then there are some of my personal issues with the game, which I'm sad to say I have to compare to Spider-Man one more time. Let's start with the stealth. It brings the game to a screeching halt, and instead of being able to fight your way out of situations like you could have done in a majority of stealth games, they go the route of, if you're spotted, you've failed. You're shot in the head, you're done. Not only are these pieces of the game drawn out, but not being able to redeem yourself when making a small mistake, you just cease to exist. Then there's the traversal, and it does the video game cliche of where you're meant to go is a different color and it kind of stands out, which is normal at this point, but then you actually mount the ledge or climb and it's so slow. And honestly, sometimes a little annoying. You can't climb if somebody is on the ledge above you, and even if they're finished climbing, you still have to wait for them to finish their complete animation, which can last seconds after they've gotten up on the ledge. And Galahad himself climbing, you have to press X for every action, and something like mounting a ledge takes more button presses than necessary. In my personal opinion, if you don't have an in-depth movement system, a simple button press and a movement of the stick is more than enough to make it feel good. Why am I saying good? A simple button press and moving the stick is more than enough to make it feel good, but the that word just doesn't sound real anymore. But the Order doesn't do that. Even in games that rely on movement, it's one button press or moving the stick and it feels fluid. I think near the end, I just ended up spamming X to get past things until I made it to where I needed to be. I'm a little all over the place, but now I want to talk about the enemies and the combat in general. Like any other game, you have the basic grunt enemy. They're basically the same whether you're fighting the rebels, company men, or the Order. And are just that, they're grunts enemies. Then you have specialty enemies. The rebels have grenadiers and shotgunners who can be recognized by their sort of hunched stature as the shotgunner comes closer, or the grenadier standing at attention preparing to throw a grenade. Then there are the company men specialty enemies. One wields a grenade launcher and the other wields the thermite gun, both having armor that means they can take many more bullets than your average grunt, which I think is kind of a good progression in terms of difficulty. Then we have the Lycans. They take lots of bullets, but after being incapacitated, you have to finish them off with your knife, which shows them transforming back to their human form as they die. Then we have the Elder Lycan, which you can't even fight like a normal enemy. We run into two, and both times we just stab them and dodge as they taunt us, which is a little disappointing. Just like the fact we didn't get to fight any vampires. The only time we get to even interact with one is when we throw a knife at Hastings, and that makes me sad. But luckily the guns are pretty fun to use, and feel about as good as you can expect. We have the special weapons as I talked about before, but even the normal weapons feel good and don't leave too much to be desired. But even in that case, the machine pistol, it's sad. I wasn't able to hit anything, but it's fine. I wasn't excited to use a machine pistol at all, no. Now that my thoughts on the game have concluded, 2, I think it's worth it. I know my opinion doesn't matter, but I'm giving it anyway. At today's prices, yes, 100%. Buy it, play it, enjoy it, have fun with it. It's only $9, and I think that's what I paid for it in 2022. Not 2022, but 2020 as well. When I finally bought a PS4 that I quickly sold because PS5 came out. But anyways, now in terms of what I have bought it for $60 back in 2015, personally, I would've. But that's something that'll differ between a lot of people, and I understand that. For me, it's very easy to go back and replay a game, even if it's something others see as a more difficult thing to go back to. I can see myself going back to this game for years down the line, kind of how I do with Modern Warfare. Don't know what to play? Here's a bite-sized game that I can knock out and feel something or enjoy the gameplay, which really depends on the game. That's how I look at games, but I know because of the cinematic experience or the focus on the story over gameplay, it'll be harder to go back to for others, and I fully understand that. But at today's price, even if it's only played once, I definitely think it's worth it. Now, do I really think it deserved the reception it got? Not at all. I think it was pinned and unjustly left behind because of major publications or the constant belittling of its runtime, saying that it's 4 to 6 hours long, when you can get so much more out of it, or even just the main game is longer than that time that they're saying. The gameplay is there, even though at times it leaves something to be desired, and the story is something I've wanted since Gotham by Gaslight was cancelled. I absolutely love games set in Victorian London, and I think it's interesting enough to just explore the world of what little of it you can. I love Victorian London, and I think it's interesting enough to just explore the world, even though there's not much of it that you can. For one last time, give it a second chance, or even a first if you're one of the people who wrote it off in 2015. There isn't much else for me to say. Thank you for watching, and I'll hopefully see you all next week. So, this was not the video that was supposed to be coming out. It was supposed to be World at War pistol only, but because of some complications, me moving across country, and just it overall taking a much longer time than I had expected, this was kind of like a last second thing that I threw together. I actually started playing this on Thursday, or Wednesday. It is now Sunday. And I just finished editing the video. So yeah, thank you to anybody who watched. Thank you to anybody who's seen anything else that I've ever put out. I appreciate it. Have a good one. What the fuck? Why can't I say that word?